Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail, the realm where the shadows whisper ancient secrets and nightmares come to life. I am your guide through the darkness, and on this channel, we delve into the spine-chilling world of Wendigo horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. First story. I don't really know what's going on. You see, I know this is for creepy untold mysteries. In fact, I have been a fan of this page for years. However, something strange has been happening that I can't explain, and I need to share it. Should you want pictures, recordings, or evidence, I will provide, but for now I am too afraid I am alone. It all began when I moved to the woods. Stories of Wendigos, werewolves, or other creatures have graced this forum for years. Without this knowledge, I can't be certain I would be able to identify the oddity, so thank you for that. This past summer, I moved to a small home on 40 acres in Midwest America. I've always wanted a hobby farm with chickens, land for a garden, and space to enjoy the quiet. This property has my home on roughly 1 cleared acre, a pond with creek-fed water, enough wildlife to watch for years to come, trees thick with growth and mysteries I am uncovering. I moved in late summer, but by the fall I was given a gift from my neighbors, an entity or a creature that I assume is not the friendliest. At 2 a.m., I awoke to my Ring camera alerting me of something in my garage. This is not unusual, so I disregarded the alert. Even then, I knew the amount of alerts was abnormal. This interruption in my rest was far more annoying than anything else. At 5 a.m., my dogs began to bark, howl, and express they needed to stretch their legs. I happily let them into the cleared pasture that was my home, but something was off. They wandered into my garage. Thinking the 2 a.m. noise was an animal who made residence among my tractor, I let my dogs in. Within moments, they grabbed hold of the intruder, although something was off immediately. Blood or the color of tissue was present immediately. After repeated attempts, I asked my dogs for the item, and they obliged. This item in the dark moonlight world looked to be a small animal of some kind, but without skin. However, without the presence of a thin bald tail and long muzzle, I am not sure I could have identified it. What stood at my feet was in fact an animal, but it seemed altered. I threw on some garden gloves to pick up the animal by its tail, and two things occurred almost simultaneously. A small child's toothed chest fell from the animal's mouth, and the animal's organs shifted toward the ground. First, I will explain what I can about the organs. In the low light, I couldn't see if this animal was skinned, or if it was hurt to the point of a fleshy appearance. Neither was the case aside from the animal's head and tail. This possum was completely inverted. The closest description I can make is if you turned a sock inside out. Nothing seemed damaged or out of place from my limited knowledge, but it was seemingly inside out. Secondly, the small children's tooth box/chest. If you don't know what I mean, let me briefly explain. As a child, nurses would give you a small plastic box that often looked like a treasure chest in order to bring a lost tooth home for the tooth fairy. This was inside the mouth of this possum and hit the ground when I went to pick it up. I threw this box in my jacket pocket and tossed the possum into the brush so as to not allow my dogs to continue to torture the poor creature. My dogs settled into their normal routine after this ordeal, and we returned inside. I pulled the box out of my pocket to examine the contents. Inside this box was a small children's tooth and a tiny note that read, "It is so nice to meet you. Welcome to town, and I hope you loved your gift." Shocked, I tossed the contents of the box and my gloves in a plastic bag, then out the door into a burn barrel. I don't know who sent this gift. I know no one in town but my neighbors, my family, and a few coworkers. My assumption was this was a prank, and it still might be, but the child's tooth was from someone I knew, someone I love, or at least I think it was. That same day, I went to see my brother, sister-in-law, and nieces. I didn't tell anyone what happened, but my youngest niece ran up to me with a gap in her teeth and pointed to a lost tooth. I was struck by the irony until C said that someone stole her tooth from her backpack which sat on her porch after school. She described the box to me, pink treasure chest with a small front bottom tooth in it. I knew exactly what the tooth looked like in the box. I told her I would look for this thief, not daring to say, "Sweetheart, someone shoved your tooth in an animal carcass then hid it in my garage." This isn't the end of the creepy events, but I had to share the little bit I could muster up. Any ideas? Second story. The portal into another world. The experiment at the facility had gone horribly wrong. Humanity was never supposed to mess with things they said was on the other side. What was meant to be a device used for traveling into other dimensions or planes of existence became the greatest weapon we created against ourselves. I put the blame on the lab coats, as I like to call the workers responsible for its design. Before I begin, I want to add a little something. My name is John Doe, since I won't be using my actual name. I come from a small town I assume you're not aware of. I was just a mere logistics and janitorial worker at a top-secret scientific facility dedicated to discovering life outside of our universe. However, this wasn't just it. The programs they had here focused on the possibility that there does exist life on the other side, or the afterlife, to be more specific. Scientists have developed technology capable of spotting things that we would write off as fictional mumbo-jumbo. Things like ghosts, demons, angels, werewolves, Wendigos, you name it. I don't want to go into too much details on what they found, so I'll give you some basics. One form of technology they created was a camera with lens designed for spotting things that aren't visible to the naked eye. All the while, they developed a radio tower, or big dish, as I like to call it, that was capable of transmitting and receiving signals at nearly infinite speeds. I don't know how they did this, and it sounded too ridiculous, but that was what I heard from some lab coats when I was simply cleaning the floors. If anything, I didn't mind listening in on their findings and accomplishments, but I wish they'd learned to fucking clean up after themselves to make my job a little easier. I assume they do that on purpose, just to fuck with me sometimes. But it still beats my last workplace where coworkers constantly create drama or gossip about others, especially me. Not to mention the pay was stable. I can't leave anyway, since my job is a contract job, and I'm required to work there for 2 years until I am let go and my contract is complete. But I was happy of the fact that I was receiving hourly pay, as well as $10,000 upon completion of contract. So yeah, right now, I'm currently not working there anymore. The facility had shut down over a month ago. All the staff, including myself, were let go following the incident. I wouldn't go back there, and we were forced to leave the town. Yes, the entire town was heavily affected by this. God rest the souls of those who perished during the incident or didn't make it out of there. So, where do I start? During a particular day where I was performing logistics work when the delivery trucks for supplies came in. As usual, I would check everything that comes in and see if there are any discrepancies or damages to the delivered items. Thankfully, they were all okay. But as I was about to start putting them away along with a few other colleagues. "John Doe," someone said, calling my name. I turned to see who it was, and I was surprised. I didn't think a high-ranked military official would get involved in the program. Maybe the military took interest in battling forces from other dimensions, but that would be a dumb idea. Perhaps there was more to it than that. Standing next to the official was a man I knew by his alias, Ace. Why? He's considered the ace of cards when it comes to doing the work here. He was a brilliant mind to have around, one that would put Einstein to shame. Ace then gave a formal introduction. I won't mention the general's real name, so I'll refer to him as Blackjack. "John Doe, this is General Blackjack. He's going to be joining us in our latest experiment." He, as well as other personnel, will assist us in monitoring for any activity regarding said experiment. Ace said. Really? What experiment is that? I asked. We call it Project Stargate. That was an interesting name for the device. The technology of the device was our greatest and most prized human accomplishment, and what also led to our greatest downfall in scientific achievement. I say this because it was through this device that a horrifying situation occurred. Nevertheless, I asked to see why he wanted to introduce me, and that's when I got my answer. You will be joining us, John. We could use your support for the logistics part of it, he said. That didn't make much sense at first, until he gave me a list of the specific items and the amounts the experiment needs. Some of them involved strange codes, as I could describe them, but these things didn't have names of the items. I'm used to seeing names and simple numbers to read, but when I'm met with complex codes or stuff like this, I'd be confused. What are these codes or symbols or whatever these are? I asked Ace. Simple. Just put them in where you would normally put information you use to order products to our facility, and the items associated with them will appear on the order screen, automatically ready to be ordered by you. That's all you need to know. No more questions, he said. Very well, I said, confused and irritated of the fact I wasn't being let in on what they're planning. When I got to the computer and popped up the website we used to order the items, I did as I was told. When I did, I was hit with a wave of confusion. Upon doing this, the item that came showed a series of more complex codes, and to the right of it says encrypted. I assume that whatever these were, the folks here don't want anyone to know what they specifically are, not even me. I don't blame them. I'm hard to trust myself, given that I'm sharing this despite having signed a non-disclosure agreement. If anything, even I had no clue where the facility was, since I never knew the town close by it. I was from a different state after all. That aside, I simply ordered the items and gave the confirmation to Ace. He thanked me for my work. What caught my attention was that the items arrived on the next day. Normally, I expected items to be arriving within 3 to 5 days, so I'm guessing wherever I ordered the unknown items from must be from a place that has top-notch delivery speed. However, that wasn't the strangest part. Not that high-speed delivery was strange, but I didn't expect the items to arrive in just 14 hours. When I checked the boxes, they all shared the same codes I saw on the computer. When I opened the boxes to see and check for items, I was astonished. There were 4 glass items resembling plasma balls you could find in certain stores, and they were held in cylindrical containers. What made it more intriguing was seeing the containers had a lid that can be opened. When I opened one, the ball began to charge as best as I could describe, as what looked like lightning started appearing in the ball. As I touched it, I was shocked at first, no pun intended. However, I wasn't electrocuted. It just felt weird. I didn't know how long I was caught up with the sensation. It's amazing, isn't it? I heard Ace say, causing me to jump in fright and turn towards him. He gave a laugh at my reaction, and I looked down in shame for that. Interesting piece of technology. When it charges like this, it's because it reacts to the bioelectricity you give off, as well as anything capable of producing electricity within it. Quite fascinating and strange. Yes, he said. Where did it come from? I asked. Let's just say a top-secret government facility in another country. They've been developing these things. Humanity is continuing their greatest achievements, even in secret, he told me. I looked at the other boxes that came in. Another one had guns that looked like a mix between an AK-47 and an M4. Upon closer inspection, there appeared to be some kind of glowing light on the top of the frame. The guns seemed strange too. I picked one up, and I was amazed at how light they were. That's when Ace took out a gun and pointed it at the direction of an empty glass cup. Be careful where you point that. One shot from it and it hits a person, that person's body will be all over the place, he said, before firing it at the glass cup, causing it along with the table to explode into pieces. But what came out of the gun was not a bullet, but a beam of light that looked like something out of Star Wars. Damn, that's fucking dangerous. Why doesn't the military have this tech? I asked. The guns that you see here are durable and well-built. They can withstand tremendous amounts of damage to it. If the enemy got his hands on this weapon, who knows what trouble they could cause for us, he said. That was at least understandable, although I got curious on the general himself. What about Blackjack and his fellow personnel? I asked. There's a reason he was picked along with several others. They're more than capable of dealing with things the average human mind wouldn't be able to understand or comprehend. Not to mention they are highly trained not only in mental capacity, but physical capacity too. Of course, they'll be provided suits for the job, since we're not going to see them sent in there with only bare skin and uniforms, he explained. But what do you mean by understanding or comprehending? I asked. Put it this way. Imagine a 9-foot-tall entity with 4 arms and 4 legs, humanoid in appearance, with the face similar to the horror figure, Laughing Jack, but without hair. Would you handle meeting that? He asked. I took this as a silly question. Fuck no. I would kill the damn thing or run away. I yelled. Of course, you would. Even if I were to tell you that those creatures do exist, but aren't hostile to us, regardless of their so-called scary looks, you would still see them as a threat. Yes. Well, no, because I now know they're friendly. I said. Yes, because you just found out, he said. Still, this didn't properly answer my question until he explained more. Sometimes in certain cases, you'll come across hideous-looking entities that actually turn out to be friendly to us, while beautiful-looking entities that actually turn out to be hostile to us. Of course, it's not always the case, but don't be quick to judge something you don't understand. Now you see what I'm saying? He asked me. I nodded, still a little confused, but slowly understanding the point he was trying to make, but confusing nonetheless. As for the remaining boxes, one had a larger glass ball in its own container, while the others had the suits the military personnel were going to wear. The gear looked pretty high-tech and flexible, not to mention lightweight and felt hard as iron. There were also oxygen masks and tanks with some kind of technology that allows oxygen to be recycled and reused from CO2 emissions, so that the personnel never run out of oxygen to breathe. As for how it works, I have no idea, and I still don't even to this day. Since the items we need to begin the experiment is here, let's get going, he said, signaling me to come and join them, which made me confused. Why me? I asked. Like I said, you'll be joining us. Grab one of those guns. You'll need it, he said. But I'm not fit for wielding a weapon. I'm not even a soldier, I said, trying to make sense of this. You are now, John. Besides, you'll be fascinated with this experiment. Come on, he explained. Still, it didn't seem like the kind of thing I should be involved in, since, as I said, I'm merely janitorial and logistics. I didn't expect to be a soldier for a day, so this was new. Still, even I was interested to see what's going to happen, one that I regret dearly after what I saw. When I followed Ace, he led me into a room that I've been in before. However, last I remember, there wasn't a massive, circular-shaped object inside it. I'm guessing they just brought it in. The device itself looked like some kind of portal device you would see in the Stargate series. Now I'm assuming this is why they call it Project Stargate. It somewhat resembles that machine too. What makes this device unique is this device had 5 empty slots, 2 small ones on each side, and a big one at the top. It's clear these slots are where those glass balls are going on. This is it, John. This is Project Stargate. It's going to be ready soon in an hour. When that does, we will be prepared to witness humanity's greatest invention come to life. We'll be able to learn more and perhaps communicate with beings from different dimensions, provided they're not hostile. Ace told me. I admit, I was surprised to see the device myself. It was big, probably about 20 feet in length and width. You and the rest of your colleagues bring the supplies here. We'll get the military suited up and the device ready, Ace explained. So I went back to the supply room to get the stuff. I admit, I was feeling nervous about this, mostly because of my fear of the unknown. We don't know what we would meet with or encounter on the other side of the portal. If it really is meant to open portals to dimensions or other planes of existence, I wouldn't like the idea of inviting extraterrestrials or demonic spirits in our world. Nevertheless, I continued to participate as I let my curiosity get the better of me. After an hour had passed and the supplies were brought in, everything was in its place. The orbs were set in the slots, the military suited up, and everyone along with the military, including myself, were all equipped with weapons. The reason for this is because in case the military doesn't make it back from whatever world they're sent to cross over to, and the inhabitants cross into the portal and are a threat to us, we're specifically told to protect this facility, soldier or not. So, even the lab coats were armed. Once everyone was prepared, I heard one of the scientists giving specific details on the function of the device. Everything is currently going well. Getting frequency readings. No malfunctions so far, Ace, he said. That's when I noticed Ace giving a big smile at this, as he was expecting the device to function well. No issues reported. Good. Activate the device, he said. That's when I watched the scientist move his hands as if he was pressing buttons, and then he grabbed onto what looked like a small lever before pulling it down. Once he did, I turned to look at the portal. It gave off a strange noise which sounded like a mix between whistling and electronic whirring. Then I noticed the glass orbs light up, meaning they're in contact with the electricity flowing throughout or around the device. I couldn't tell. Then the big orb at the center top lit up, and after a few moments of waiting, I noticed a scene manifest in the center of the device. The military personnel lined up in front of the device, preparing to cross over into it. When I looked at the scenery in front, I was amazed. The place seemed quite beautiful. I noticed what I assumed to be birds in the distance flying around in that beautiful purple sky. There even appeared to be a huge mountain in the distance. One of the birds probably saw the portal because it started flying towards us. But when it got close enough, I realized they weren't birds. They were dragons. This dragon looked a lot like the one in the movie, Reign of Fire. Then, it gave a very loud screech. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Ace yelled, as one of the dragons spat fire at the personnel. Before the portal was shut off, the dragon's fire came in contact with the suits of the personnel. Apparently, those suits could withstand the heat of that fire, and thankfully, no one was injured. However, everyone cheered on about this moment. Why all the cheering? That dragon could have burnt us all. It even flew towards us. I said loudly. That's a good sign too, John. That means our portal was a success. We just made contact, Ace said in a fit of joy and excitement. Of course, the fact that the dragon's fire touched the suits means that the portal wasn't showing just a simple scene, but it was also a gateway into another world. I was at least thankful the dragon didn't cross through the portal, else it would be here with us and wreaking havoc in the facility, and we'd probably all be dead. Unfortunately, Ace's ambition got the best of him as he asked to turn the portal back on. When it was back on, the scientists scanned for other worlds or dimensions to access. This one seems to operate in a different vibratory frequency, the scientist claimed. Apparently, this was a dimension beyond that of our physical universe. Looking at it, the realm looked like it was made of pure energetic light. Then, I noticed the inhabitants. They resembled humanoid beings with etheric bodies. Thankfully, none of the entities gave a threatening gesture, since they looked into our direction. Should we go through? General Blackjack asked. This world is etheric in nature. There's a pretty good chance you'll leave your bodies, therefore die if you all cross into it. So to be safe, it's best if you stay put. Ace told them. I'm not surprised with Ace's expertise on etheric energies, given that he's worked in this facility dedicated to finding such things in the existence. Still, the realm looked beautiful and interesting. It seemed to be a realm surrounded in an empty void, yet it was inhabited by beings made of pure light. Proceed to scan for more worlds. Ace said, I was bummed out when we lost sight of that plane. I can only wish to join those inhabitants after I die, even though that sounds ridiculous. Once the next scan finished, we noticed a new world that was strange. This world looked like ours, but it was black and white in color. It was like staring at an old vintage movie back in the 1930s. Strangest of all was seeing the inhabitants in the distance. Are we able to cross into it? General Blackjack asked. Unlike the previous one, scans show this one is stable. So yes, the scientist claimed. Once he got the approval, he and the military walked through the portal and began walking on that world. That's when I saw the inhabitants looking directly at them. I jumped slightly in shock when I noticed one of those inhabitants appear quickly in front of the portal from the side. It reached its arm out in an attempt to touch the portal, only that its hand went through. From what I observed even at a distance, this thing resembled Slender Man given its features. The only exception was the height, that being 4 to 5 feet as I could describe. It also had fingers with long, black nails. It seemed completely naked, but at least the thing didn't have any genitalia. After observing us through the portal, it turned towards the personnel who were visibly watching it, and then walked towards them. I assumed that this thing was going to attack the general and everyone in their world. But that didn't happen. Instead, it just stared at them for a few moments, before it turned away and took off running, as if it had seen the boogeyman. The other figures in the distance did the same thing, choosing not to interact with the personnel. General Blackjack, can you still hear us? Ace asked through the speaker. Yeah, we can. Thank goodness. Luckily, there was still sound to be heard from you, else I wouldn't be talking to you right now. General Blackjack claimed. The guys who made those suits are geniuses. The communication system in your suit can still keep in connection with US despite being in the New World. Now come back in, Ace said with a smile. The general and all the personnel came back. Their suits were checked for any substances from that world, but there was nothing. Let's do one final look into another world before we cease our experiment, Ace claimed. If there was one more thing I could give credit to Ace for, he was spot on when he said this was our final look. This is because it was at this moment that things turned grim. When the scientists began a scan and found a new world, we were met with a hazy, smoky scene. For some reason, we couldn't see anything. But that wasn't the worrying part. What followed next was a series of loud, screeching sounds, followed by guttural roars and howling noises that I've never heard in all my years. I grew up in a small town where I would hear wolves howling at certain times of the night. This howling sound was new, let alone extremely awful. All these sounds from it made my skin crawl with pure terror. I don't like that noise. I'll find another world, the scientist anxiously stated, before beginning a new scan. I was thankful that the noises were gone. We found another world which probably wouldn't be any better if the device stayed on it. There appeared to be skyscrapers, and the entire city seemed as though we were staring into the future, or perhaps an alien civilization. However, this lasted for only several moments, because after that, this is where the horror began. The world disappeared, and after hearing what the scientists said next, a cold grip of terror got me. The device. Something must be controlling it. It's taking us back to the previous world we just left. Everyone in the facility, even I myself, became anxious and horrified. I assumed that whatever was in that world must have noticed the portal we made to access its world and decided to force us back to it. When we were brought back, those horrifying sounds returned. To add to the horror, a figure walked through the portal. This thing was horrifying. It looked like an unholy mix between a werewolf and a Wendigo. It had antlers on the top of its head, with long, black tusks protruding from its mouth, while the body looked fleshy and furry and its eyes bloodshot with a yellow iris and crimson pupils. Then it gave off a horrible, guttural howl. Other hideous creatures, different in sizes and appearances, came through the portal. The hideous, wolf-looking entity slashed at one of the soldiers, causing his suit to be ripped apart with ease. "Open fire!" General Blackjack screamed. We all shot at the creatures. They were taking damages from the shots, but this didn't seem to drive them back, nor cause their bodies to explode. These things were resilient. They got angry and started lunging around, attacking anyone else nearby. "John, get the fuck out of here. We'll hold them off. The rest of you, go," Blackjack told me. I nodded and ran as fast as I could. I heard loud footsteps coming toward me, with the sound of its guttural roar, telling me that one of the creatures is chasing me down. Third story. Something's crawling down my chimney. The coffee in my mug formed bubbles as I swirled it around in my hand, signifying that once again, the acidic taste was from my piss-poor excuse of a dishwasher leaving soap scum behind that I failed to notice. Nonetheless, there's good whiskey mixed in with this black bean water, and I refuse to waste good whiskey, or any whiskey for that matter. The wind outside was slinging the lighter limbs of a tree against the window outside of my den. While I do miss the company of my girlfriend, the time to myself when she's out of state on a business seminar gives me time to enjoy silence throughout the house and a night off to get drunk and play video games. The only other living thing in my house at the moment, besides that fucking cricket in my bathroom that's diving me up the wall, is my Doberman, Wendigo. All was going swell and tranquil until I winced at the smell of gas and looked over at the gas logs in my fireplace, which had died as a result of the pilot light failing. Son of a bitch. Relinquishing myself from the indention that I had left in my couch cushion, I stumbled to the fireplace and turned the gas knob to the 0 mark. A draft of cold air was already flowing down through the chimney. So much for avoiding an increase on the heating and air bill. Wendigo leaned his head up from his resting place on the recliner next to the couch to study me as I tampered with the pilot light. "It's F.U.B.A.R, buddy. That means less treat money for you, fat ass." He jumped to the floor, his head lowered and the hair on his back standing straight. "What is it, boy?" Something heavy slapped against the roof of the house. My first thought was that a limb from the oak tree had broken off from the tree, until I heard whatever it was start to scurry about the roof, knocking off shingles and creating a racket in the process. I jumped into fight or flight mode as I heard the noise of the chimney cap being torn off echo down and into the living room. Waving my phone in the air failed to provide a signal as I focused in on the distinct noise of something forcing itself down my chimney, like an egg down the throat of some viper. Wendigo yelped and ran into the back bedroom just as the intruder stopped short of the fireplace opening. Seconds of a painful silence passed before a clawed hand swung from the chimney and down into the fireplace, grasping in the air for something to hold on to, before gripping a hold of the iron railing that held the logs in place. It wheezed and grunted as it forced itself halfway through the opening and onto the brick mantel. Muscles, nerves, and fibers that covered its skinless and gored mass twitched as it lifted its blood-caked horse-like head and screamed at me, dark blood gushing between its gigantic molars that it bared. White liquid poured forth from behind its bulging, glassed-over eyes, steaming as it fell against the brick mantel and leaked down onto the wood floor. A horrific neighing emitted from the creature's throat once again. It grimaced in pain as it shifted back and forth, more of its mass squeezing out of the fireplace, a hooved leg attached to its side flailing out and laying against the brick. The being's massive front arms reached forward, and its claws dug into the wood paneling as it pulled more of itself into my house, 3 more hooved legs being revealed along with it. I turned to sprint towards the back bedroom, and the voice of a small child filled the din, seeming to come within a dark recession of the beast. Wait, no. Stay. Stay. No, play. The voice of the child filled in gaps between terrible squeals and bellowing neighs as I ran into the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. Wendigo scurried further under the bed as the sound of the creature awkwardly stomping through the hall grew closer to my door. My bedroom door is beginning to crack now as it slams itself its surface, the sounds of its hooves clapping against my wooden floor as it keeps backing up to give itself running starts before crashing into the frame. The beast sometimes letting out a wailing animal scream before charging. Inside. Let inside. Let in. In. I'm against the corner of my room at this moment, using a mobile phone on Wi-Fi to type this. No signal at all, and the door is beginning to crack at the frame. I crawled under the bed, dragging Wendigo with me just as the creature busted in. In front of me right now are 4 hooves stomping around my room, its clawed forearms tearing my room apart in search of me, white liquid drilling onto my carpet. It's breathing heavier and lowering itself now to observe under the bed. 4th story. What happened to Robin Cloud Rosalina Ophelia O'Lavender? It's been almost 15 years now. I can't believe I'm actually writing this down, but I have a feeling I have to. What you're going to read here you won't find in the case file. If you ask anyone about this side of the story, they'll probably scoff and tell you that it's only the imaginings of a traumatized child and that it shouldn't be taken as anything other than that. But I know that's not what this is. And I know I have to put pen to paper or finger to keyboard and finally tell my side of the story. This happened when I was 7. Actually, the story starts when I was 5, and the incident takes place on my 7th birthday. I still don't celebrate my birthday the same way, but that's a different story. Something you need to know about my town is that it was tinny, and in the middle of nowhere, the first grocery store was a 45-minute drive away, and there was only one general store in town that sold everything from small pets, mainly teacup hamsters, to food crops, flowers, and meat. Seafood was also in abundance, so it was cheaper than a lot of places. There was an estuary on the far side of town where you could find everything from lobsters or orcas, even sharks every once in a while. We weren't allowed to swim there. There wasn't a law or anything, but it was kind of an unwritten rule. There was one school that taught 1st grade through high school. If you wanted to go to college, you would have to leave town. It was so small that I'm pretty sure the number of dogs and cats outnumbered the people. It also wasn't a tight-packed town like a lot of people are probably used to. Most of the time you could see another house, but it was a long walk there. It's a town where everyone knows everyone, and if someone's a scumbag, they basically get kicked out of town. Not really, but when everyone you know pretends you don't exist, you leave pretty quickly. The town also had a very specific culture. Most people there, including myself, are biracial or a complicated mix of a bunch of ethnicities, mainly white, Asian, and Native American. There was a yearly pet festival that celebrated cats, dogs, and all other pets for their companionship and love. There were flower petals and lanterns and tea ceremonies and pets of all kinds and flower crowns, and when the sun set all the lights were turned off, and the stars and moon would light your way through the town center. There were also a lot of stories about supernatural creatures, skinwalkers, and Wendigos apparently prowl the woods, snatching up wandering trailers and teens out past curfew. No one ever took those seriously, but there was this old storyteller who always insisted they were true, telling everyone that a Wendigo took her baby sister when she was a child. She would tell the story to anyone who asked, and I'm going to tell you that story now. She was a 75-year-old Native American woman who always wore this string of bells and crystals around her waist. She's actually still alive today, and we're fairly close, but that's not the point. When I was only a child, I had a baby sister. She was the cutest baby anyone could ever see, with big dark eyes, bronze skin, and tinny brown and black hairs on her head. She was a free spirit. You could see it in her eyes. Fire made her laugh, and she would look in as pods of orcas swam by the beaches. Me and my baby sister were as close could be. I used to call her my baby. When my parents would take her to the doctor, I would ask, "Where's my baby?" I would tuck her into her crib at night and bottle feed her when my mother was away. But one night I heard my baby crying. Father was away on work that night and Mother had a long day and was asleep. I walked to her room and knocked on the door, but she didn't answer. I walked down the hall and opened the door to my baby's room. Then I saw it. It was at least 10 feet tall. Its face was a deer skull with glowing red eyes. Its whole body was black with long silver bone claws instead of fingers, each at least 3 feet long. Its back was hunched, its horns scraping the ceiling, one hand scraping on the ground and the other above my baby's crib. I screamed so hard I thought I might faint, and the Wendigo looked at me. Its eyes were the eyes of a predator. My mother came running down the hall, and just like that, it snatched up my baby in its claws and left through the window. Over the next weeks, the whole town searched, but they never found my baby. I'm sure I'm getting some details wrong, but that's the gist of it. That story comes into play later, but now I need to tell you about Robin Cloud Rosalina Ophelia O'Lavender. Yes, that's her real name, but everyone called her Birdie because of her first name. Birdie was a fairly quiet kid. She didn't have many friends, so I decided to talk to her one day. I don't remember the exact day, but those first 2 or so years don't matter. Birdie had fluffy bright red hair, bronze skin, and dark eyes with nose and ears that were always a little bit pink at the tips. I never really fit in with other kids, and I don't mean that in an "I'm not like them" or "I'm so quirky" way. I was just a weird kid who didn't talk much. Birdie got paired with me on a drawing project. We had to use watercolors to paint what the school looked like. After that, we stuck together like glue, ate lunch together, put our cots next to each other during nap time. You get the idea. I always felt like I could tell her everything, even the things I was nervous or ashamed to tell my parents. It feels like yesterday, the first time she came to my house. Mom and Dad had a fence set up around our house. It's about 6 or 7 feet high and is made of flat wooden boards, encircling the property in a shape a bit like a Kia hole. That fence is still there. I can see it out my bedroom window while I'm waiting this. It doesn't make me feel safe like it did before. Anyway, I ran from the road to the fenced-in area leading to my house. It's maybe a 3-yard dash from the road to the fence, but it felt like a lot more as a kid. Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the teachers used to walk me home from school when she could. She was a family friend, and my parents were very busy people. Birdie asked me why I ran to the fence when we left the street, and I nervously told her that I was scared that a monster was going to attack me. For reference, our house is directly bordering the woods. There's nothing for miles in any direction once the trees start. I asked Bertie why she wasn't scared, and she scoffed and explained that the stories the adults told were just meant to scare us into not going into the woods. She would remind me that whenever I got scared, or if she slept over and there was a noise coming from the woods, she'd say it was probably just a black bear or coyote. She was always good at making people feel better. After a while, I stopped running when I got to the end of the road. I was still nervous, but I wasn't scared anymore. Bertie would always walk painfully slow, just to mess with me. We stuck together for 2 more years, making cupcakes and drawing and throwing snowballs at each other and being kids. I miss that now. I took it for granted. My 7th birthday party wasn't anything big. I've never been a fan of big, loud situations even as a kid, so it was just me, Bertie, my parents, and my Sobo, that's what I call my grandma. That night was so happy, songs and stories and running around in our backyard until the sun went down. Bertie and I went to bed around 10, which is pretty early these days, but Bertie was 8 and I had just turned 7, so it was late for us. She shook me awake around midnight, grinning mischievously. Hey, wake up. Bertie, I remember the exact tone I used. Still sleepy, let's go into the woods. That got my attention fast. What? I said, let's go into the woods. Everyone's asleep now, so nobody can stop us. I rubbed my hands together nervously. I don't know. Come on, it'll be fun. We won't go too far, and it'll be like a fun celebration for your birthday. Conquering your fear and stuff. I hesitated, all my old fear of the woods rising in my throat. Bertie noticed. Look, we don't have to or anything. She backpedaled. It's your birthday. We can sneak downstairs and play flashlight tag or something. Would that be fun? No, I'll go. Let's go into the woods. I regret those words now. I want to suck them back in and never say those words again. Are you sure? MHM. Let's go. We went downstairs and grabbed 2 flashlights, and Bertie took a big ball of yarn out of her overnight bag. Why did you bring that? My mom taught me to tie it to a tree branch so I can follow it back. She says it's a way of not getting lost. I didn't think much of it back then, but looking back, I realized that she had planned this. I don't know why she had, but I don't know. Maybe she just really wanted me to not be scared anymore, given we lived in the middle of the woods and all. We took the back door and the fence into the woods, and Bertie tied the end of the string to the first branch in the woods so we couldn't just wander back to town. Our flashlights were really bright as we walked, so we could always see where we were stepping. I was terrified. Just the smallest sounds made me jump. Bertie noticed and grabbed my hand. We can go back if you want. No. Let's keep going. I wanted to go back, but I didn't want my only friend to think I was a wuss. We kept going. After a while, I noticed something odd and grabbed Bertie's sleeve to make her stop. The only sound was our footsteps. No nighttime forest sounds at all. Even the crickets had gone quiet. The wind shifted a bit, making the tops of the trees bend and making me shiver. Bertie backed up a bit nervously before stopping. You don't grow up in the middle of nowhere without learning what it means when the woods go quiet. It means a predator is nearby. A moment later, a branch cracked close by, and one of the short trees moved a bit, but there wasn't any wind this time. We took off, following the yarn back through the woods, not bothering to rewind it. We could hear something large moving behind us, breaking branches and moving fast as the wind picked up again. Bertie threw the ball of yarn behind us, and whatever was chasing us let out an inhuman cry. Looking back, I don't think it hurt. I just think it was annoyed. We ran faster. My legs burned. My feet hurt. A snarl of thorn bushes knocked my arm, and I started to bleed, but I didn't stop. __, please come back. Let me help your arm. It was my mother's voice, but not my mother's voice at all. I started to cry and ran faster. My feet slammed on the ground, and I wasn't paying attention to the yarn anymore. or where I was, or how close the thing was behind me. I just wanted to get as far away as fast as I could. The cold wind caught in my throat and made my tears feel like ice. Branches scraped my knees and shoulders and caught in my hair. The branches we had ducked under and avoided on the way into the woods now felt like they were trying to push me backwards towards the thing. I heard Bertie scream for me to keep running, and I did. Finally, I broke through the tree line, but I didn't stop. I ran back through the door in the fence, slammed it shut, and screamed as loud as I could. Sobo was the first to come out. She ran over to me and hugged me close, asking me what happened, why I was outside, and what I had done to get so banged up. My parents were there only a few seconds later, rubbing my back and trying to calm me down. Mom asked where Robin went, and I looked around. She was right behind me, but she wasn't there. I stared at the door in terror. I thought she had been right there with me. I could have sworn she was right next to me when I went through the door, but she wasn't there. I started crying again as I realized I had shut her out of the yard. I don't know how long it took me to calm down enough to explain what happened, but the moment I did, my mother called 911 and my father called Bertie's parents. Sobo sat in my bed with me, bandaging my cuts and holding me while I cried. I can't remember when Bertie let go of my hand, or when the cops showed up. The interviews are all a blur. Sobo canceled her flight back home so she could stay longer. The story the police went with was that Robin and I had encountered a murderer in the woods, that whoever it was had taken Robin, and I had only gotten away because they had stopped to kill Robin. The headline was tasteless. 2 birds, 1 stone. Child murdered in the woods. Murdered? Yeah, right. They never found Bertie's body. I know what that thing was, a Wendigo, or at least what the adults were talking about when they called it a Wendigo. The tree that moved wasn't a tree at all. And when Bertie yelled for me to keep running was when it had got her. Nobody believed me. The police said that the monster stories got in my head and I replaced the killer with a more literal monster, and that my mother's voice calling out to me was just my mind trying to comfort me. But I know that's not true. The monster is real. I still feel it watching me sometimes, more curious than hungry. I wasn't meant to escape that night. I don't know if it's intelligent enough to know I just got lucky, or if it doesn't understand how I escaped. It's watching me now, through my bedroom window. I can't see it, but I know it's there, just beyond the fence, somewhere in the trees. I don't leave the house at night anymore, and I take my college classes online. I can't leave town. For the last 15 years it's been following me. If I leave, I don't know if it'll follow me there too. It's safer for everyone if I stay in a small town in the middle of nowhere that nobody visits. Every time someone goes missing, I can't help but wonder if they met the same fate as Bertie did. Honestly, don't know if Bertie is dead. She very well could be, but for some reason I can't tell. If someone asked me if I saw her die or if I think she's dead, both questions I have been asked, I just respond with that I didn't see her die, and there's no evidence that she died, but that I also doubt she's alive. And I do mean no evidence, not a speck of blood or a shoe left behind in the spot her footsteps stop. Bertie, if I could talk to you today, I would tell you I miss you, that I love you, and that I want to see you again, and that I hope you're all right, wherever you are. And I promise I never stopped running. So, I guess now someone knows what happened to Bertie. 5th story. My boyfriend fell down a hole in the woods and something was in there with him. My boyfriend is not named Jacob, and I am not named Gray, but for privacy reasons those are the names I'll be using. He and I were camping one summer. We were walking out the spot where we planned to pitch the tent. Usually we camped in public areas with lots of other people around, but this was our 3rd summer camping together, and I wanted to be a bit more adventurous. There was supposed to be a dirt trail, but we must have taken a wrong turn because the trail had become fainter and fainter before disappearing altogether. It left us standing, confused, in the mosquito-filled air. Jacob was attempting to use his phone to consult the digital map of the area, but it apparently wasn't loading. After a minute, he said that we should probably just walk back in the direction we came until we found the trail again. We took about 5 steps before I heard his yelp, and then a thud. I looked around but didn't see him. "Jacob?" I asked. "Down here," came an echoing reply. I walked a few cautious steps toward the noise, but still almost fell into a deep hole. Most of it was covered up by twigs and bent-over plants. There was a gap where Jacob must have fallen through. "Are you all right?" I called down. Mostly, he shouted back up. "My shoulder and legs hurt, and I don't see a way back out of here. Actually, I don't see anything. It's really dark." I brushed away the clutter and examined the hole. The rim was worn brick, and I wondered if it was an old well or something. The weirdest part, though, was that I couldn't see anything after a couple inches. I kneeled and stuck my arm down the thing. I couldn't see my fingertips. Suddenly, I got a terrible feeling. I wanted to get Jacob out of the well as soon as possible. Luckily, I had a strong rope in my backpack. "Do you think you could climb the rope if I threw it down?" Maybe. Could you tie knots in it or something?" I nodded, then realized he probably couldn't see me. "Yeah, just give me a couple minutes." I retrieved the rope from my bag and began to tie knots, spaced about 1.5 feet apart. I had tied 5 knots when I heard Jacob's voice again. "Gray? How close are you to done?" His voice shook a little. "About 1/3 of the way there." "Why?" "It's just dark and gross, and I'm a little bit scared." "I'm scared too, but don't worry, I'll get you out." I tried to sound confident and reassuring. I tied more knots. "Gray?" he asked again. "Can you hurry? I think there might be something down here with me." My heartbeat sped up, and I quickened my knot-tying pace as well. "Like a frog or a rat?" "Maybe." I was nearly at what I thought would be a sufficient length. A scrabbling sound came from the hole. "Gray, are you done yet? There's definitely something down here, and it's not good," Jacob yelled. I finished tying the last knot with shaking hands. "Yes, just hold on for 1 second," I shouted. I ran over to the nearest tree and tied one end of the rope around it. Then I threw the knotted end down the hole. I leaned over the edge and squinted into the darkness. I could see nothing, but heard the sounds of a struggle. "Does it reach?" I yelled. "Yes." The rope swayed, and then went taut. I stood at the top of the hole and waited anxiously. I heard more scratching, yelling. The end of the rope swayed. Then I heard a thud and everything went silent for a moment. I had begun to fear the worst when I saw Jacob's face emerge from the darkness. I was so unbearably relieved. Tears sparked in the corners of my eyes and a grin split my face. Jacob stumbled a few feet away from the mouth of the hole. "Pull up that rope." "Now," he demanded. "Oh crap." "Yeah." I quickly began to withdraw the rope from the hole, but it didn't take as long as I thought it should. I examined the end of the rope. It wasn't normal. Where there should have been a clean end, there was a messy and frayed one, like it had been severed hastily. I turned back to Jacob. He was slightly too short. His eyes were the wrong color. His fingernails were sharp and has bits of string caught under them. He grinned, but it was wrong, menacing. Jacob would never grin like that. Without warning, the thing lunged forward and reached out as if to push me into the hole. I jumped backward, just barely avoiding its claws. I'm not proud of what I did next. I ran. I don't even know if it was chasing me. I just ran and ran. Eventually, I found the trail again. I tore down it. Tears streamed over my cheeks, into my mouth. I ran to my car. I'm sure I must have alarmed the other people in the area, but I was going too fast for them to ask questions. I drove away and didn't look back. This was a week ago. I've been living in my car ever since, ignoring everyone who tries to ask me where I am. Because of all the missed calls and unanswered texts, most of them are coming from Jacob. It asks why I ran, if I'm okay. But mostly it asks where I am. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.